Hello and welcome to a short video on how to use the Reltio Data Loader to quickly load data into your tenant. Okay, I'm now in my Reltio tenant. Notice I have 0 records here. This happens to be my free instance of Reltio Identity 360. We're now going to use the data loader to quickly load some data into this tenant for us. In order to access the data loader, I come up to the chocolate bar on the right, click on it, and open the Reltio Console. This is our access point for all of the administration capabilities that are offered by Reltio. Notice down here is the data loader under Tenant Management. Clicking on this opens the data loader for us. Now I'm going to choose to load data and either choose entities or relationships. Entities being the things that I care about, relationships being the ways that those things are connected together. In my case, I'm going to choose entities. Now I'm going to choose the location of the file, either local on my machine or on S3, Google Cloud, Azure, or Secure FTP. Let me quickly grab a file on my local machine. Click Next. This file is now uploaded, and now I'm ready to begin the mapping process. Either choose an existing mapping if I've already created some already, or alternatively, I want to create a new mapping. Think of a mapping as a very simple means of tying your external file to the Reltio data model in terms of the attributes that you want to map. We'll call this my new map. I'm going to choose my entity type of individual, which is the only one available in Identity 360, and specify that the first line of the file is the header. Up the top here, we can see all of the attributes. Now what I want to do is quickly associate these attributes with the Reltio data model. I open up this panel on the right, and that exposes the attributes and the crosswalks in Reltio. Crosswalks are a key element in Reltio, and this is our terminology for the primary keys in the data. Here I'll click Add, and I'm going to now add a particular crosswalk. There's 2 parts to this, as you can see. The first one is, what type of data is this? Where is this data coming from? In my case, I'm going to choose Microsoft Dynamics as the provider of data in this scenario. And now I want to tell the mapping which attribute in the data contains the primary key. I'm going to click on the ID column, and then I'm going to click on value here. Now notice that you see ID exists here, and notice on the top here you can see crosswalks value. Now I can go and associate my attributes. I'm going to do this in a very similar manner. In other words, click on the column and click on the Reltio model. Click on my column, click on the corresponding attribute in Reltio, and so on. I will now repeat this process for all of my attributes that I care about. There are some basic capabilities included within the mapping itself. So for example, if I click on the gear, notice I can define some settings for what shall I do if it's empty. Should there be a default value if nothing is provided, etc. So some basic capabilities from that perspective, but we're not trying in any manner to replicate an ETL tool here by any stretch. So I would now go ahead and complete this mapping of all of these particular attributes to my data model. Let's add a few more real quick. I can also search within the model. So for example, address type, address line 1, city, and so on. And I'll just continue this on. And again, using a quick search mechanism, if I don't want to scroll down, let's look for emails. And let's type email and email type, and off we go. I'm not going to continue doing all of these, but hopefully you get a sense. Now I'm just going to click Save. This saves my mapping, and I can now click on Continue. I can create a name for this. I can say this is guys load. I'm doing a full update or a partial update, and I'm going to click on continue. In my scenario, I'm not going to change the lifecycle actions radio button. I'm going to leave everything as it is. And in this scenario, I've got to the second to last step, which is now just a summary of what I've done. What's the entity type, how many records in the file, the input file itself, the mapping, how many columns have been mapped, and so on. Now I can either save this as a draft or I can load this data. I'm going to click on load, and this is now going to create a background job that will process this file as part of its operation. And it'll be sitting in this pending status, and when the job is completed, I'll get a completed little tile here that I can then look at. And this job will start running. Notice right now when I look back here, it's picked up the 2000 records and it's busy working. So I know that it's now busy processing these particular records. And fairly shortly, we'll end up with a message here that this job is done. And here we can see that this job has now completed. My 2000 records have been loaded. So if I come back to my Reltio tenant and refresh this, we'll now see a bunch of records. And there they are, 2000 records. So very simply, the data loader helped us populate our tenant that had 0 records in it when we started and has now ended up with 2000 records ready to go. As part of this load operation into Reltio, cleansing would have been performed, such as address cleansing, phone number, emails. Matching would have been performed, identification of duplicates, and automatic merge processing would have occurred. As an end user of Reltio, all I've had to do was just load my file into Reltio. I didn't have to ask it to cleanse or match or merge. So in summary, we accessed the Reltio data loader from the chocolate bar on the top right of the application. We chose a file containing data. We created a mapping to tie our attributes from our file to the Reltio data model, and then we loaded the data. And behind the scenes, Reltio performed cleansing, matching, merging, made the data available for us to use. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please keep an eye out for others in the series.